Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of my podcast Marketing Masala Marke. My name is Ritesh and I'm the founder of the Kite Flyers. Today my guest is somebody who we call a complete package in the corporate world. He's somebody who graduated from a premier management institute, joined the corporate world as a management trainee, then worked with a financial institution company to make it public, to helping businesses and entrepreneurs through advisory, mentorship and guidance. Please welcome Mr. Subhrangshu Neogi. So thank you so much for joining, Subhrangshu. It's really an honor and privilege to have you. There is so much that I want to talk to you. There is so much that is to be learned from you. There are a few aspects of it which we will be touching upon. The time is short, so we'll not be able to cover everything. But I'm really excited to know your journey and how it went and where you are today. So let's start with that as the premise. I know you've spent a lot of time in the corporate world. You've then moved into advising people like us how to set up the business and going forward, and you're now investing in businesses also, and you today are also an entrepreneur who has his own company in the fintech space. So there's a lot that has happened. So let us, Subhrangshu, start with the beginning. Just walk us through your journey, how it happened and where you are today.
That makes me feel very ancient though. But anyway, on a lighter note, but thanks very much for having me over. Ritesh, always a pleasure to meet you, always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. But yeah, it's been a fascinating journey. As you said, let's begin from the beginning. A little bit about myself, essentially a Bengali, grew up in Delhi, so had the best of both worlds, and hopefully that kind of helps me in my journey. So grew up largely in this part of the world, finished my schooling from St. Columbus, college from Hindu, graduation and then my MBA from IMI Delhi. And then I was fortunate to actually, start with one of the, great companies in the FMCG space, Dabur. So that's where I kind of learned the ropes, cut my teeth in sales, distribution, marketing, etc. And fortunate enough to have fantastic mentors, fantastic, seniors who empowered me, helped me kind of, sort of wade my way through, as I call it, in the corporate world. Moved to Reebok after that, was, fortunate enough to be part of the India business at that point in time, early years of Reebok in India, so huge learning experience. Moved into telecom in the early years, part of the Indian arm of PCCW, launched a very promising, internet service provider business, one of the fastest growing in the private space, helped them pivot to an enterprise focused ILD business, moved to media for a while, and we've spoken about this at Bennett Coleman. Then did something, for a short while in the Indo-Japanese corridor in business consulting. Again, a very exciting and rewarding, experience. After which I had a very long stint in financial services, in Relige Enterprises, which was the holdco for multiple financial service businesses.
Right.
A chief marketing officer at Relige. So that was almost 11 plus years there.
Right.
So very fascinating journey. Post which I had a short stint with Laureate Education, in the education space. So all in all, net have been fortunate enough to, work in the whole corporate space across multiple sectors. So FMCG, retail, telecom, media, financial services across all verticals other than core banking, education, both from a B2C, B2B context. And then of course, last 5 years, my journey, I'm an entrepreneur now. So fundamentally now run a fintech as an operating partner, investor, board member, etc. Called Trustmore Technologies. We are basically in the transaction space, dedicated to creating an ecosystem of trust, transparency, as I call it, in transactions. Flagship product is EscrowPay, which is India's first digital escrow solution. So we work with traditional banks over the banking layer and provide a digital layer to our clients, which are largely B2B customers, enterprises, startups, digital first businesses, corporations and so on and so forth. Other than that, I have a fingers in other pies as well, in several other emerging businesses. And yeah, so fascinating story so far. And the journey continues, excitement continues. So every day in the morning one gets up and till the time one gets this feeling that, it is a new day, there's a new excitement on the cards, I'll keep going.
So, Subhrangshu, over a period of time, आपने कई जगह पे काफ़ी कुछ किया. And when I was going through your profile, so एक चीज़ मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा fascinate भी कर रही थी, curious भी बना रही थी, which is the age and stage of your life when you decided to start something. स्कूल ऑफ थॉट जनरली ये होता है कि स्टार्ट अर्ली सो यू कैन लेवरेज द एनर्जी एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, दैट्स वन स्कूल ऑफ थॉट. एक स्कूल ऑफ थॉट कहता है कि नहीं, फर्स्ट गेन दैट एक्सपीरियंस सो दैट यू आर वाइज इनफ टू मेक द राइट चॉइसेस. ये दोनों चीज़ों को मिलाने के बाद भी जिस टाइम पे आपने शुरू किया उस पर हर कोई कहता है कि यार इट्स लेट, राइट? ऑल्दो वी हैव एग्जांपल्स ऑफ KFCs and the McDonald's of the world, which the founders kind of started it late. But what prompted you and what kind of enticed you कि यार चलो अब when people think of retirement and settling down is when you decided कि नहीं यार I want to kind of restart and refresh the button and then just kind of go again.
गुड क्वेश्चन. देखो पहली बात तो सेटलिंग डाउन पर से ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है.
अच्छा.
इट्स अ वेरी ट्रेडिशनल इंडियन थिंग कि भाई सेटल डाउन होना है. सेटल डाउन क्या होता है? If you settle down, in my view, you should always have a feeling of not being settled, because that sort of uncomfortable feeling is what makes you go out there and keep batting for more. So if you look at cricket, I'm a big fan of cricket, as you know, and we've been talking about it. Tendulkar, each time he used to come and bat, he used to be a little uncomfortable. He was never settled down.
Right.
He could have rested on in Lawrence and said, "Boss, अब तो मैं settle हो गया. I'm the biggest batsman or the greatest batsman on the planet Earth, and therefore I'm settled down." Settling down to कुछ होता ही नहीं है. Coming back to your question, I think there's no right or wrong answer. Fundamentally, in my view, again, this is my worldview, I may be wrong, others may differ. If you have had experience of running businesses, being part of established companies, being part of a larger corporate frame in an entrepreneurial sort of a venture, entrepreneurial culture, it teaches you a lot about life. It teaches you about what to do and what not to do. And I think after that, and after gaining from that, if you wish to start something of your own, I think that's the most right, the best time. Again, see, each to his own. And in my case specifically, I was at a certain life stage where, and it's not an easy decision to jump into entrepreneurship. Right?
Absolutely.
So you have to consider your own life stage, your personal liabilities, life stage of your family, because I think more than you, it's about how the family sort of gears up to this change.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right? So I think keeping all those things in mind, I think I was blessed to be in the right place at the right time. My kids had sort of grown up, liabilities were limited, right? My personal life was at a certain stage. And I had gained meaningful experience having worked in various sectors, etc. And at times, be it default or by design, you just jump into it. You can't plan for life. As they say, life happens to you.
Right.
So life happened. You went with the flow and you jumped in. One thing led to the other. And things happened, yeah.
तो किसी ने आपको घर में मैम ने बोला नहीं कि क्या करने लगे हो, मतलब?
नहीं, more than my wife, I think my parents actually, it was a culture shock because as you know, I come from a services background, right? And for them, working in a linear job or a corporate role was the normal, right?
हाँ, कि हर महीने इतनी आ रही है, बस
बढ़िया है, लाइफ सेट है, सेटल्ड हो. बट फैक्ट ऑफ द मैटर इज कि जिस दिन मैंने अपने पेरेंट्स को भी बताया, स्पेशली माय डैड, द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, अच्छा कल से ऑफिस नहीं जाओगे? So that was a fundamental quintessential question that came my way, but that is how we've grown up, right? But I think entrepreneurship in the last few years, we've seen that culture sort of evolve in India. A lot of people are now taking this plunge, but again, there's no right time or wrong time. Okay, each to his own. And if you feel that there is a calling and you got to do what you got to do, just go out there and take your chances. Yeah. See, ultimately, there is a risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? You can't say that there's no risk and from tomorrow I will do my own thing, so therefore I can do things at my own terms. In fact, on the contrary, if you're not doing what you're doing in a corporate setup and you're doing it for yourself and you're building your own venture or running your own company, I think self-discipline is all the more important.
All the more. Absolutely.
Keeping yourself motivated, keeping yourself energized is very, very critical. Which people forget. So at times you can fall into that trap of being a little laid back. कि बॉस अब तो कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, आई एम डूइंग माई ओन थिंग. So you got to, and I always keep, and I meet a lot of youngsters, I meet a lot of ex-colleagues, peers, etc., who want my inputs. Advice is a very strong word. I hate to sort of use the fact that I'm an advisor, but if they want to use me as a bouncing board, I keep telling them that when you turn an entrepreneur, you're trying to do stuff on your own, not necessarily starting up, because you could just do a conventional business, etc., and not a typical archetypical startup. You got to be more self-disciplined. You got to be more self-aware. And more importantly, you got to be aware of what you're really good at. Okay? Leverage on your strengths, play on your strengths, and then go out there and play the game, right?
Right.
So I think that's critical.
कभी आपको, while you were thinking of making this decision, was it कि आपने corporate में थे and you felt, there's some joker who's by the stroke of luck your boss, and you didn't agree with the philosophies of either the organization or the person in charge, and then you said कि बस यार अब इतना करने के बाद भी यही सुनना है तो मैं अपना ही कर लेता हूँ, वो रीज़न था? या you generally thought कि यार मतलब there is a calling somewhere else, I am doing this because I, like you said, I ended up doing this, but my calling is somewhere else, right? जैसे मैं आपको बता रहा था कि friend of mine who I was with in IBM, his calling was obviously photography, right? But he was doing what he was doing, and then he eventually moved out. So, and did very well, and still doing. आपका क्या reason था?
फिर ऐसा ना कुछ, there's no philosophy to it. Okay. Every 6 months
Incidental था कुछ?
No. So see, again, as I said, part default, part design. So every 6 months I used to feel more often, so for the first 10 years, I think it's a very, I never had that feeling, right? But I think I was fortunate to be in an organization called Religare, which actually was breeding a culture of entrepreneurship.
Achha.
And it is there that I realized that, the joy or the liberating feeling of running your own thing. And we had the guardrails, we had all governance layers, etc. But each of us were being encouraged to actually become mini entrepreneurs. And I am thankful to actually my bosses, to answer your question, that did the boss or did people who I was reporting into or working with, or my senior colleagues, responsible for me taking this plunge? The answer is probably a no, because that encouraged me to also start thinking in this direction. So the fact that they were empowering enough and creating a culture was probably what bred that, sort of thought process in me. And every 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, I used to keep thinking, but then obviously you were held back for whatever reason. Because see, every 6 months I was doing something exciting. Some new project came along, new launch came along. So I was part of that story and life was set, okay? But obviously, there were, situations which at times are beyond your control, which essentially necessitate you taking a call or going out there and exploring something different. Okay, and life happens, it is never pre-planned. People may sort of, prophesize and give you this very fancy gyan that, oh, I thought about it 15 years back and this was my calling. In my view, life happens, okay? You don't plan for things. Things happen. Life has a certain, and I believe in destiny. There were certain things which are predestined, right? You got to work, go with the flow.
Right.
And when you go with the flow and you're taking the right steps and you're taking definitive steps, because there are no half measures.
Right.
Lena hai to puri tarah karo, nahi to mat karo.
Correct.
Right?
I agree.
So I think that's how it happened here. And I think, as I keep saying, it's a journey. I can't say that, oh, I've arrived as an entrepreneur and I've done, what I've had to, and now I'm kind of reflecting back on my journey for the last 30 years. It's all, it's B dot shit, whatever you want to call it. You want to beep that out. But fact of the matter is, it is a journey, If somebody says that I've really arrived, unless you are, sitting on a certain net worth and, you're a big business tycoon, you never really arrived. It's a journey. And even if at a materialistic level or from a net worth perspective you've arrived, you may still want to, otherwise why would, let's say, a big business tycoon, a corporate tycoon, who's running, let's say, $1 billion business, etc., would want to wake up every day in the morning and still want to do the same thing.
Right. True. I agree. Absolutely.
So it's a journey, right?
Right.
And I think that continues. And, there are some people who believe in retiring early and giving up everything and sort of going out there and doing wildlife photography, while there are some others, like me, who still like to do what they love doing, which is working, creating something, building something every day, and adding value. Right? Through work and through what they do and what they do best.
Right. Yeah. So I'll just extend to what you had mentioned before this question about, I know you hate the word advising, but mentoring.
I hate that word as well. I mean, I know a lot of people use this very loosely, like mentoring and advising. But yeah, I work along with a lot of people, right? And I love sharing. See, naturally, I love being with people. I love having people around, friends, colleagues, ex-colleagues, and I love connecting with people, right? So that's part of my inherent DNA. So when I meet them, it's always a good thing to share with them my life learnings. So if you want to call that advising or mentoring, so be it.
So I had a guest in my show. He still is an entrepreneur. He was in a corporate setup and then he went out and started his own company, sold it off. मैंने आपको बताया भी था शायद.
Yes.
And now he's doing, doing another organization. And he shared that while he was building that company and he was looking for investors. He made pitch to about 119 investors before he finally got his first investment. तो क्योंकि आप उस तरफ भी बैठते हो, you know, you are also investing in businesses and you're on board and all of that. So what do you look at when you make a investment decision in a business? Is it a lot of data, this, that, or is it more that I connect with this and hence what goes through your mind?
See, first of all, I'm no big investor, so you make me sound like a large venture capital. No, but on a more serious note, you know, I think whenever you're getting associated with a company, either through in whatever capacity, I think you're taking a position and a call on not just on the business but the person who's running it, because ultimately it's about people, right? So for me personally, when I get involved, engaged, immersed in a particular business, it's about the person who's sitting at the top, right? His vision or her vision, right? What's the core DNA? What are the value system? The cultural, you know, sort of strain that runs across the organization, because that is what drives business.
Right.
Everything else comes later. So for me personally, it's about the individual. Okay. Of course, the category has to be exciting. There have to be good macro tailwinds, right? The problem that you're solving has to be relevant enough for, you know, from a business standpoint, from a commercial standpoint. It cannot be an airy-fairy, esoteric idea, etc. But it has to be a meaningful problem that you're solving. You're genuinely, making a difference in the life of the customers that you're serving. But most importantly, it's about the person who's driving the business.
Right. Okay. So let me come to a very interesting observation, and you mentioned about it also, and in a very good taste. So I will dwell a little deeper into that. I was going through your profile on LinkedIn, and you know, there have been many organizations that you've worked with in your career before you moved into the more advisory side of the business, etc. This one standout organization which you mentioned a while back, Religare, where you spent
more than a decade,
half of your career.
Absolutely.
है ना? मतलब इस तरीके से.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit. I mean, एक इंसान जो बाकी किसी भी जगह 3 साल 2 साल ऐसे से ज्यादा नहीं रुका, वहां पे ऐसा क्या था कि वो 10 साल से ज्यादा रुक गया, और वहां से ऐसा क्या सीखा जो आपको आज भी आपकी मदद कर रहा है?
No, absolutely, and a very, very interesting. A lot of people ask me that question, but again, I'll go back to the same thing. Life happens. Nothing was pre-planned, right? So you can't walk into a scenario and say, I will stay only here for 2 years or 3 years or whatever. One thing leads to the other, right? And I think I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I joined the organization when it was at a pre-IPO level, at a certain stage when they were just at an inflection point. So I was lucky enough to be part of the core team who joined the organization when it was just hitting inflection point. Was fortunate enough to take the company public, you know, was part of the core team that seeded various businesses. So every 6 months I was doing something new. So we were doing something new consistently for every, you know, after every 6 or 8 months, you go from one level of excitement to the other.
Correct.
Right? Because why do people leave what they do? Right? Either because there is no sort of, I would say, variety in the role that you have, or you have an ecosystem of people who are not the right ecosystem for you.
Correct.
You know, as they say, you don't change roles, you change bosses.
Right.
I was very fortunate that my immediate reporting manager, you know, and who, by the way, is a very successful entrepreneur now. He runs a very large, you know, NBFC now. And I was always, you know, sort of mentored or guided or given that sense, you know, he gave me space. And of course, not just him, but also my other colleagues, etc. were there. The culture was very empowering, right? So that was one of the, you know, factors that kept me there and kept me going. Most importantly, every 6 to 8 months, I was doing something new. So function of the people, the culture, and the role, you know, is what kept me going. And I kept learning something or the other. So every day I used to wake up in the morning, there was something new to do. Right?
Okay.
And that I think is a very big thing.
Absolutely.
Right? And you kept learning. Because your learning curve should go up. Because the day your learning curve starts, you know, sort of dipping, which usually happens, you know, in organizations more often than not, either people sort of stick on to the same thing and they keep stagnating and they keep plateauing, or they start looking for options. In my case, I was lucky. So again, nothing predetermined, nothing which was something that I controlled. Life happened to me and I was lucky, I was fortunate. And the rest is
चीज
history.
में एक चीज और आपसे पूछना चाहूँगा, I don't know whether you are the right person to answer this question, but I'll still ask. आपने मुझे बताया that when you had joined, the organization was at an inflection point.
Correct.
You were part of the team which took it public, which means it grew phenomenally while you were there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with the growth, while it brings in a lot of opportunity, this that, it also kind of, for lack of better word, corrupts the environment also, because it becomes highly political. बहुत सारे लोग आते हैं, नए लोग आते हैं. जो कल्चर आपने 8 लोगों में बिल्ड करना शुरू किया, वो 80 में ट्रांसलेट हो थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होता है. एंड आई विल नॉट नेम ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, बट आई नो many organizations who have been a victim of this and are struggling to really solve this people problem. तो ये कैसे?
It's a fantastic question, and I think one of the core sort of roles that I had, and I won't say I was singularly playing this role, it was in collaboration with, let's say, the head of HR and other people, etc., was really create the culture of the brand internally. So it's as much, it's as much internal as it is external. So therefore, we were like a melting pot. At that point in time as an organization, we had multiple underlying businesses. So let's say in wealth management, there was a certain culture that came in because there was a certain crop of people that were leading the show there, who were from a certain private bank. Then investment banking was from, it was a global business. So you had a lot of people from global organizations, global banking ecosystem joining there. A lending business had a certain culture. So all of those people, different, came from different backgrounds, different cultures. So it presented a challenge of a different kind. But the challenge so we used to sit at the holdco level, the group entity level. One of the big challenges was how do you cascade a one relegate culture or a one singular values, across the organizations to bind the entire organization together. So it was a challenge. Okay. But having said that, I think there has to be a structural framework. So which means we went out there, created a very strong internal, value system, okay, of our value framework, etc. Created a single one relegate culture, consistently. And it's not like, you put some value systems on your walls and that's the end of story. You got to internalize that and you got to drive that agenda consciously. And you alone as a marketing or a brand custodian cannot drive that.
Correct.
You have to drive that with the line leaders, with the line leadership at an underlying level. They have to be aligned. Their underlying teams have to be aligned because it's like, cascading effect.
Correct.
So the tier 1 gets aligned, the tier 2 gets aligned, tier 3 gets aligned. Finally, there's cascades across the organization. And it's not about putting static values on the wall. It's about living this culture every day and driving it collaboratively as a team. Okay. And the same culture has to cascade when you meet customers outside. So, I used to, talk about, and I've actually written a blog, and I was, used to talk about the 3 C's of marketing or brand building. So before you go to the end customer, it's about aligning your channel and your internal colleagues. So it's about colleagues, channel partners and customers, especially in financial services, right? Because a lot of decisions in financial services are also taken based on the impact created by channel partners, let's say insurance or any other business for that matter. So when we used to start building the core brand essence and the brand values or any campaign, the first step was to align people internally. And then in turn align the channel partners or the intermediaries who were, let's say, the middleware between us and the end consumer. And then, of course, do outward facing campaigns for consumers. So when you were able to do, or when you were striving to do this seamlessly across the 3 C's or the continuum, that's when true brand building happens.
True, I agree.
Right?
Absolutely.
Easier said than done, of course, but that's how it is.
Right. No, great.
Hope that answers your question.
Of course it does. And it also kind of brings me to another thing that I was reading about you. There is this very interesting action philosophy that you have coined. It's called EPIC, right? So I know what it stands for, but I would like you to kind of just tell what it is and how it came into play and how do you follow it today?
Well, got up one day in the morning and I said, yaar, why am I doing what I'm doing? Kya hai mera, what's my philosophy? And I have 2 grown-up kids now, they're not kids now, young men now, and keep telling them that, boss, if you have to do something in life, live life the epic way. Otherwise, just don't do it. Just don't do it for the heck of doing it. At times, as in my current role, in my current journey as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's doing their own thing, you tend to question your existence every day. Ki main kar kya raha hu? And it's a very, I would say, it's a challenging journey, right? Because someday you feel you're on top of the world, that you're the hero, you know, which
सब हो गया, सब कर लिया,
सब कुछ कर लिया यार. I mean, I've cracked it, right? And you feel really energized and on top of the world. On other days, you really feel low. So it's a very lonely journey. And then I realized that, you know, what is it that is driving me, and why am I doing what am I doing? And and people who know me well, they know that, you know, I love coining these little acronyms and stuff like that, because that puts the framework and, you know, puts things in context. So whenever I used to talk to teams internally in my, you know, corporate avatar, and even now when I talk to partners or customers, etc., when you put it in a framework like that or an acronym, it just contextualizes things and, you know, connects with people.
Absolutely.
You're able to sort of take the nichod and send it out to the audience. So in my view, you know, EPIC is my philosophy. That's my personal philosophy, and I'm not even saying that, you know, you should do it or somebody else should do it. But in my view, it's about you know, having the right kind of energy and having the capability to transfer the energy to your entire ecosystem, because that's when, you know, real magic happens. The P in EPIC is about passion.
Okay.
You know, करो तो यहाँ से करो वरना मत करो. You know, there are no half measures, at least for me. I is about integrity. So energy, passion, integrity. Whatever you do, integrity is very important for me. You know, the day I feel that I'm not doing the right thing and something which is not, you know, fits into that frame, I will probably not do it, or I'll discourage people from doing what they're doing. And the C is about collaboration. You can't win all battles by yourself.
Right.
It has to be teamwork. Good old collaboration, good old teamwork. So, right? Energy, passion, integrity, and collaboration.
Wonderful.
So that's how I lead my life, and that's how I would encourage people who are my near and dear ones, or in my, you know, immediate first degree, to sort of look at life with that prism.
Wonderful. नहीं सर, बड़ा कमाल का acronym है ये. It's easy to remember, has very important aspects of not only running a business, but I think in life in general. I think it's very good. Perfect. So I'll also encourage people to please live your life the epic way. I think that's
Trademark कर लो
सर, अभी तक करा नहीं. अरे अच्छा, अब मैं आपसे एक बहुत ऐसा सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ जो थोड़ा कंट्रोवर्शियल भी हो सकता है, बट आई हैव बीन अ मार्केटियर, यू हैव बीन अ मार्केटियर.
Still am, yeah.
हाँ जी, नहीं सो मतलब कॉर्पोरेट रेल्म से हम बाहर हो गए. तो हम नॉर्मली इंटरव्यू, अगर आप किसी टेकी को देखो, टेकी तो गलत हो गया, किसी फाइनेंशियल बैकग्राउंड, फाइनेंस की टीम में किसी को देखोगे, या एचआर की टीम में देखोगे, या एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की टीम में आप देखेंगे, तो वो लोगों के टेन्योर्स बड़े लंबे लंबे होते हैं.
राइट.
5 साल, मतलब आ जाते हैं तो जाते नहीं है, घड़ियां देनी पड़ती हैं तो भी नहीं जाते, ऐसा होता है. राइट. 5 साल हो गए, 7 साल हो गए,
10 ईयर सर्विस अवार्ड
पूरा. अब कट टू मार्केटिंग, मेरे को आज तक कोई इंटरव्यू अपना याद नहीं है जहाँ पे उन्होंने मुझे ये नहीं बोला हो कि यार तुम्हारा तो टाइम बड़ा कम है, क्योंकि आई हैव बीन स्विचिंग 2 years, 2.5 years.
In your case.
In my case, 3 years also sometimes. I've also had a long stint in one of the organizations like you, but mine was 6 years, not 10 years. 11, sorry. तो in your view, because आपने decade plus भी किया और आपने छोटे-छोटे भी किए हैं assignments. तो आपके लिए जो ये tenure होता है, ये what is your view on the tenure of a marketeer, right? Does a longer tenure give you more comfort when you are hiring somebody, now that you are hiring people in your company? Or is it more about कि अच्छा क्या किया हुआ है, कहाँ किया हुआ है, कितनी देर किया हुआ है, एनर्जी, पैशन जो आपने बोला, और या फिर जो ये 2-2.5 साल होता है, ये क्या आप इसको डिसलॉयल्टी के हिसाब से देखते हो कि यार ये आया मैंने इस पे, क्योंकि नॉर्मली ऐसा कहा जाता है कि पहले साल कंपनी आप पे इन्वेस्ट करती है, दूसरे साल आप उसको रिटर्न देते हो, ऐसा बोला जाता है. तो क्या आपको ऐसा लगता है कि यार ये 2 साल वाला जो है ये तो बड़ा ही रिस्की प्रोपोजिशन है, करना चाहिए नहीं करना चाहिए? आपको व्हाट इज योर व्यू?
नो, दैट्स अ गुड क्वेश्चन, बट देखो बहुत सब्जेक्टिव है, राइट? सो एट द एंड ऑफ द डे it's not about the duration of one's tenure, it's about the impact you created. Okay, so clearly that should be the barometer of assessing someone, if that's the question. That when you're looking at somebody, you're hiring somebody, or you're talking to somebody, you know, I think it's about the impact. Okay, but in my view, gearing up for creating impact and then measuring it, you know, walking the 9 yards is a long process. आपने आज कुछ शुरू किया, 6 महीने में 8 महीने में कोई इम्पैक्ट आता नहीं है, टाइम लगता है, डिपेंडिंग ऑफ कोर्स ऑन व्हाट द एजेंडा इज, डिपेंडिंग ऑन व्हाट यू आर ट्राइंग टू डू, बट यूजुअली इट्स अ 2 to 3 year साइकिल. सो 2 से 3 साल अगर आपने नहीं किया, या 2 से 3 साल के रेंज में, ऑफ कोर्स नाउ साइकिल्स आर, यू नो, सॉर्ट ऑफ crashing, cycles are being shortened, because when you're talking about digital, when you're talking about various new technologies, etc., you know, measuring impact is easier. Measuring impact is faster as opposed to traditional means, and you can course correct also. Right? So 2 से 3 साल का I think is a sweet spot. आपने आज कुछ शुरू किया, 6 महीने में 8 महीने में कोई impact आता नहीं है. You know, were you able to really sort of take something that you had started to its natural fruition, or it's not? So I think that is really the sort of average tenure that one should be looking at. But again, who am I to judge people?
नहीं, of course.
But fact of the matter is कि अगर आप लंबे stint के लिए हो या छोटे stint के लिए हो, what really matters is जब आप रहे किसी role में या जो आप, you know, when you set out to do something what you did, how did you do that and what did you achieve? But what did you achieve, you know, is something that one would achieve only after a certain point in time.
Correct.
Maybe you sowed the seeds and you walked out and somebody else kind of reaped the benefits. But I think it's about creating impact, right? So there is no, again, no right or wrong answer, etc. But yes, I mean, 2 to 3 years is usually sort of a good time to sort of look at a reasonable, you know, sort of a time frame.
एक हाल फिलहाल, just extending this conversation, एक किसी से मेरी बात हो रही थी. He's stayed in an organization for a longer period. Didn't get too much of hike, क्योंकि अंदर सिस्टम में रहते हो तो आपकी हाइक कम होती है versus when you make a switch. And then he said कि
But yes and no when that's subjective.
हाँ, मतलब मैं वैसे एग्जांपल आपको जो, क्योंकि वो कॉन्वर्सेशन थी, तो उसने मेरे को बोला कि यार जो है पहले मेरा बड़ा मजाक उड़ाया करता था कि तू 2-2 साल में चला जाता है, ये है वो है, यू नो, आगे चल के प्रॉब्लम होगी, लीडरशिप रोल में कोई लेगा नहीं वगैरह वगैरह. फिर एक दिन मुझे कहता है, तो आई एम ऑब्वियसली आउट ऑफ दैट रेस, बट मुझे बोलने लगा कि यार तूने ना बहुत ठीक किया कि तू 2-2 साल, क्योंकि ज़्यादा रह जाओ ना तो जो कंपनी है वो वैल्यू नहीं करती, तुम्हारे को ना पैसे बढ़ते ना इज्जत मिलती है. तो आपका क्या व्यू है इस चीज़ के ऊपर?
नहीं यार, आई थिंक दैट्स नॉट ट्रू. अगेन सी दीज आर अगेन यू नो कॉरिडोर क्लीशेज. Okay, these get sort of, you know...
situation क्या है, frustration कितनी है?
Yeah, these are corridor cliches, right? Corridor conversations, coffee conversations, etc. It's not about that. That, you know, if you've stuck around in a... Why would otherwise people stick around, let's say, in a Hindustan Lever, to name a few organizations, Tatas, you know, and large organizations where I know, so Dabur, for instance, you know, the gentleman who's now the group CEO was an ex-colleague, right? Is a very dear friend. He's been with the organization for almost 30 years. He joined as a management trainee, is now the CEO of the company.
Right?
And there are, I mean, there are various other examples, right, which are there. Of course, you took one name, which are there. So I don't think that's true. You know, it is about your own experiences. It is about the opportunities that you get. It is about, as I said, you know, adding value.
Right.
So in my context, I stayed in for a very long time in an organization. Maybe I wouldn't have left that organization if the situation hadn't sort of panned out the way it did in that organization. So as I said, it's part default, part design. You can't really predetermine these things or pre-plan these things. So to answer your question, it's not true, you know, that you've stayed in an organization and you've stuck on, so, you know, you're part of the furniture and all of that. That's corridor conversation. I think it's about how you're adding value to the organization and vice versa.
Correct.
And the day there is a mismatch, I think rather than sort of sticking around and waiting for life to happen to you, take proactive steps and move on. You know? Because life does happen, as I told you. Again, going back, life happens to you. It's how you kind of make most of that situation and how proactive you are about life is what really, you know, becomes the differentiator.
Perfect, perfect. So another question that always keeps intriguing me, and because I meet a lot of people who are coming out of colleges. So especially if you're coming out of a premier institute, whether it is engineering, whether it is management or whatever, they have a sense of entitlement because they believe that, you know, अब जहाँ से हम पढ़ के आए हैं तो हमें तो वैसे ही बहुत कुछ आता है और हम जानते ही बहुत अच्छे प्रीमियर इंस्टीट्यूट से हैं और while they are studying there is a lot of अच्छा इधर से कर रहा है, बहुत बढ़िया, घर में भी रिश्तेदारों में भी बहुत इज्जत होती है,
वैलिडेशन आती है
बहुत ज़्यादा. फिर आप बाहर आते हो, जब आप कंपनी में आते हो तो आपको एकदम रेड कार्पेट रोल किया जाता है, तो आपको ऐसा लगता है कि बस अब जो है मैं तो बिल्कुल
I've arrived.
हाँ, I've arrived पहले दिन ही. But in reality, when actually the rubber hits the road, it's very different, and hence a lot of those people react and behave in a certain way, and they have very strong opinions about the organization, and they feel that they have landed in the wrong place. So, what is your first view on this approach of the kids? And I know you hate the word advice, but what is your 2 cents?
Sure. No, I think, look, very, very valid observation because, and I keep saying this and telling this to people that, you know, even when I walked in, you know, the corporate avatar, I came from a tier 1 school, a tier 1 college. decent, B school, had a fantastic internship with a tier 1 organization, ITC. So everything was going right for me. So when I joined, Dabur, which was my first job as a management trainee, I also thought the same.
Achha.
I've arrived. One of the best sort of upcoming, those days, large FMCG organizations, management trainee, premier background, came from a very, very sort of, a family structure also where the sense of entitlement was very, very high. And but the reality, is when you actually go out there and make a call to a retailer in an FMCG environment and he throws you out of the shop. So when the rubber hits the road, that's exactly what you said, is, that's an awakening for you. So I think people who are smart, people who definitely have that sense of, learning orientation would take that as an awakening and really not have that sense of entitlement. So throw that baggage out of the room. My suggestion to people or youngsters, etc. today is, or at any level, when you enter an organization, be like a sponge, soak everything in. Your learning orientation should be very high. Throw everything out of the room, travel light. So one of the things I keep telling people is travel light.
Baggage mat leke chalo.
Baggage mat leke jao. Just travel light. And be a sponge. So be a sponge, travel light. And the third thing is, Ratish, whether you're from, let's say, any premier institute, etc., your skills are anyway there. So in organizations or in corporate environments or even otherwise in a company, upskilling तो आप कर सकते हो, right? But attitude जो होता है ना, उसका कोई vaccine नहीं होता है.
Correct.
Right.
Either you have
Skilling
it or you don't.
Either you have it or not. So when I look at people, it's not about the academic background so much. It's about what that person brings to the table, the learning orientation and the attitude. If you have the right attitude, as they say, that defines the altitude.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think that's my belief. So be a sponge, travel asset light, and have the right attitude.
Right. No, perfect. I think that's a very good advice. So people who are listening to us, please remember, travel light, be a sponge, and have the right attitude. Perfect. So I think we are at the end of the show. It was a fabulous conversation as always. आपके साथ बात करके काफी कुछ सीखने और समझने के लिए होता है. तो अब जैसे कि आप जानते हो, the name of the show is Marketing Masala Maar.
Sure.
So there is one masala question that I keep at the end for our guests.
Googly तो नहीं है?
नहीं, बहुत सिंपल है. आप क्रिकेट पसंद करते हैं, आप पकड़ लेंगे गूगली होगी तो. So question is very simple.
Sure.
You've been in the marketing space and now, of course, kind of heading an organization and everything. एक सेकंड के लिए अगर आप अपने करियर पे वापस रिफ्लेक्ट करें या अर्ली डेज में चले जाएं, अगर आप मार्केटियर ना होते तो आप क्या होते और आप क्या कर रहे होते अगर आप इस जगह नहीं होते? आपके पास कोई मार्केटिंग का स्किल नहीं है आपका, और ऑब्वियसली मार्केटिंग था तो आप इतनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में रहे और आज हो जहाँ हो, बट अगर वो हटा दूँ तो वो नहीं होते तो क्या होते?
I think something inherently to do with people. Because I derive energy from people and vice versa. And I transmit that energy. So I think something to do with people. So could have been something in the field of creativity, something around fine arts, etc. And being a Bengali, that's in my DNA somewhere. But yeah, I'm essentially more right-brained than left-brained. So something to do with the right-brain side. I don't know, maybe doing something to do with music or theatre, because I used to do amateur stage theatre in college, and or something to do with maybe the legal fraternity, as a lawyer, a lot of people. So I used to debate, right? Public speaking. So something in that realm maybe. If not marketing, then maybe that.
Interesting. Very nice. Very nice. Perfect. Thank you so much, Subhrangshu, for
It's been
joining.
a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely talking to you, as always.
Likewise.
And I hope that we get to bring you again soon and have more experiences.
Looking forward.
And thank you again.
Thanks, Rajesh. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks. What an insightful conversation. Living an epic life was my takeaway from this one. What was yours? Do write in the comment box and let me know. I also want to take a moment to express my gratitude and thank you for all the love that you have shown for all the episodes that have been aired thus far. I request you to please like, share and subscribe my channel, as it helps me reach to a greater audience and develop more liking and insights for this. Who is the next one you would like to see? I want to know. Please tell me, and I look forward to hearing back from you. See you soon.